Okay, welcome to another webinar provided by the International Project Management Day team. And this is Frank Salatis, and I'm going to do a very, very brief introduction here. The first thing I want to talk about is, of course, International Project Management Day. Thank you for joining us. International Project Management Day, as many of you know, is a day that has been set aside for recognition and acknowledgement of project managers and project teams. The idea behind International Project Management Day is that I've always looked at being a project manager as somewhat of the unappreciated profession, and it was really important for people around the world that are involved in projects, and also people who are basically the recipients of projects and products of projects, to understand the work that goes into it and the amount of effort and dedication that project managers are involved in with their project team. So keep International Project Management Day in mind. It is the 7th of November 2013. Put it on your calendar and plan for some way on that particular day to recognize your project managers, your project teams, for all the work and all the contributions that they do in connection with making a difference in the entire world. Today we have two great presenters. We have Roch and Deborah Wojdan, and they are going to be talking about making the shift to balance. One of the things that I think most project managers have a bit of a challenge with is to balance the constant challenges of day-to-day work and managing projects with their personal lives. And both Deb and Deborah will provide you with some insight into how to achieve that balance. And I think that you'll find it a very, very interesting presentation. And with that, I'm going to turn it right over to Deb Roch, who is going to make some introductory comments. So Deb, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Frank. Well, I'd like to welcome all of you. We're very excited to have all of you here for this call. I am Deb Roch, and my co-facilitator on the call is Debbie Wojdan. Both Debbie and I are experienced project and program managers, professional workshop facilitators, and coaches. Together, we have over 50 years of combined experience working with people both in the corporate arena and community environments to help them reach their professional and personal goals in challenging situations. We have experienced the challenge of being a program and project manager, and we know how difficult it is to care for yourself while caring for others. We have a lot of passion around living a balanced life as a project manager and as a caregiver, so much so that we founded Integrating Balance as the platform to share the message. We just believe that the material we're sharing today will spark your interest and motivate you to jumpstart your journey to integrate balance. As a brief overview of the telecall, we're going to cover key concepts around a systems perspective of balance, why balance is so important, how we got out of balance over time, the journey towards balance, and how an individualized balance plan can keep you on track to defining and achieving your balance goals. Today, we won't be focusing on the science of project management, but rather we're going to be focusing on you, the project manager, and how increased balance will contribute to enhancing your experience as well as others' experience of you as a project manager and ultimately your success. At the end of the call, we believe that you'll have a better understanding of the need for balance in your life, how your role as project manager is affected by balance, implications of out-of-balance systems, and integrating principles for optimum results. The quote on the bottom really says it all to me. You have an opportunity today from what you learn to change your direction overnight. So I'm going to move to the next slide to learn more about systems. It's important to start with the basic framework of systems thinking before we focus in on balance. Systems thinking is the process of understanding how things regarded as systems influence one another within a whole, and an ecosystem is a great example for this. Wikipedia defines an ecosystem as a community of living organisms, plants, animals, and microbes, in conjunction with the non-living components of their environment, things like air, water, and mineral soil, interacting all together as a system. And these components are regarded as linked together through their nutrient cycles and energy flows, two very important concepts. Systems thinking views individuals in their context and their interrelatedness to their other systems and communities. And a very important function of almost every system is to ensure its own perpetuation. So let's consider that definition in light of our lives. How are you like an ecosystem? Well, most importantly, your body's a community of interacting systems. Let's consider the nervous system. It's comprised of the brain, the spinal cord, and nerves, and is one of the most important systems in your body because it's your body's control system. It sends, receives, and processes nerve impulses throughout the body. And these nerve impulses tell your muscles and organs what to do and how to respond to the environment. So much like the ecosystems depend on all its elements, fish, sunlight, water, microorganisms, to thrive, all of your body systems interact together with the nutrients you receive from oxygen, water, food, as well as the energy you receive from the systems in which you participate. Just as an ecosystem is a community of many communities, you are a member of various communities, family, work, peer group, school, neighborhood, and you're involved in numerous interactions across those various environments. All systems continuously seek balance, whether an ecosystem, a corporation, a project team, a family, or your physical body or emotional well-being. When they reach an out-of-balance state, negative consequences at some level become apparent. And if these are not addressed, these consequences will continue to accelerate. Since we are all part of many systems, or interrelated whole elements, there's a cause and effect impact on the overall system based on the values, behaviors, and actions of those elements. Our roles change as we move in and out of our responsibilities within the systems of which we are members. In organizations, systems consist of people, structures, and processes that work together to make an organization healthy, balanced, or unhealthy, unbalanced. Systems thinking looks at the potential of what could be. In the book Presence, Peter Senge and his co-authors state that when people in leadership positions begin to serve a vision infused with a larger purpose, their work shifts naturally from producing results to encouraging the growth of people who produce results. What can you do to ensure sustainable renewal in your projects, life, and community? Just as an ecosystem needs balance for renewal, so do you. So I want to move on to the next slide to understand how projects are like systems. The definition of a system is an interrelated set of elements coherently organized in a way that achieves something. And you see the key words bolded. Now, you consider the standard definition for a project, very similar definition and very similar key words. The difference is the time-bound nature of a project. And that is the exact opposite of a system which wants to ensure its own perpetuation. Although many of our projects seem to align more with ensuring their own perpetuation than being time-bound. I think we've all experienced that. A system is a set of things, people, cells, molecules, etc., that are interconnected in such a way that they produce their own pattern of behavior over time. This means the system is the source of its own problems. There is no one to blame in a system's perspective. Only an opportunity to take ownership to introduce change. Have you ever joined a new company and although it was in the same business as your prior company, the culture or pattern of behavior was quite different and not what you'd hoped for? You have to decide if you will fully adopt those new set of behaviors or inspire change. The quote by Russell Ackoff, who's an operations theorist, totally captures the system's perspective of interrelatedness. Our project management environment is dynamic, and we must address changing problems introduced by the various systems with which we interact. According to Danella Meadows, one of the world's foremost systems analysts, once we see the relationship between structure and behavior, we can begin to understand how systems work, what makes them produce poor results, and how to shift them into better behavior patterns. This is what you as a manager of projects and a leader of people must ask yourself. What is my part in creating the system or project as it is, and then look for the future or results that want to emerge. I'm going to turn it over to Debbie to talk more about balance.
Thanks, Deb. I always like to make sure that we all have a shared understanding of the terms and language that we'll be using on the call today. So two terms you're going to hear frequently are caregiver and balance. So let's take a look at what they mean. The Free Dictionary defines caregiver as anyone who has responsibility for the direct care of another. You're probably asking yourself, well, what has that got to do with me as a project manager? Your role and success as a project manager is affected by how well you care for the people on your team, your vendors, stakeholders, sponsors, etc. And also the many other roles you play, be that as a parent, a leader professionally or in the community, or someone who in their personal life does have responsibility for the direct care of an ill, special needs, or aging family member. And even if you're none of those roles, there's a very important role that belongs to you, and that's the direct care of yourself. At the end of the day, there's no one who can do that caregiving role better than you. So when we look at it that way, we're all caregivers, probably in more ways than we've previously considered. And that's a lot of responsibility. With that responsibility also comes great opportunity to have more control of your life and your work. We also want to take a look at the word balance. Once again, the Free Dictionary defines balance as a state of mental, emotional, and/or physical equilibrium. For our purposes, we're not going to talk about balance or equilibrium as an absolute. And by absolute, I mean, that the scales across the board are perfectly equal or in perfect alignment all the time. Overall balance is going to be unique and, look a little different for each person. Of course, that's going to need to be within reason because it can't be so unique that we begin to move into the unhealthy zone. Okay, so we've established that we're all part of many systems with different and changing roles within those systems. And as the second bullet here says, these systems are always seeking balance. So with all we have going on in our personal and professional lives on a daily basis, responsibilities and expectations that are pulling us and pushing us toward being out of balance, and at the same time, these systems are trying to get to balance. Sometimes, they give us a nudge with some subtle cues, and then other times with more drastic manifestations. So is it any wonder that, we can easily become overwhelmed, feel exhausted, or anxious? With all this happening internally and externally, it would be humanly impossible to keep all your systems and roles in absolute balance. So we're not going to think of balance, therefore, as something rigid, but more fluid and always moving and changing. At different times on an ongoing basis and sometimes at a daily basis, changing priorities, new requirements, client demands, schedule changes, they're going to be thrown into our professional system. And that's going to create an out-of-balance situation in one or more areas of your life, which in turn can circle back and further affect your professional system. Remember systems thinking. Any change in one area, even the best change, can cause an impact in other areas, which can include some unintended consequences that could be good, and or bad. Sometimes they show up just when you think you have everything figured out. So as project managers, you all know that there's only one thing that's constant, and that is change. But that's okay, if we're aware and ready for it. When something new creates an out-of-balance situation, first it's important to see, where can you minimize the disruption so it doesn't get worse? And second, see where you can build up some other areas that can help to keep you balanced while you neutralize the situation. So how do we continue to incorporate all these changes and stay in balance, especially today in our fast-paced, ever-changing world where there's so many demands put upon us? And since, today everybody's feeling the pressure of doing more with less, there's really not too many people who are able, to jump in, recognize our situation, and take care of us. So it's our responsibility and our opportunity. I know we don't always think of it like that, but it really is an opportunity to create the balance needed to reach your goals and be successful professionally and, for your optimum well-being. I find that most people are not used to thinking about themselves first, not to mention actually putting themselves first. We're often uncomfortable or, just don't know how to ask for what we need. We may have some long-standing beliefs, or there may be some cultural norms that keep us from focusing on and asking for what we need. Even if it means we could eliminate some barriers, solve some problems, and in general, accomplish something faster and better. Well, we created this webinar and our follow-on workshop because, we not only do not think it is selfish or nice to have to put yourself first and create a balanced environment for yourself. We believe it's a necessity. It's the only way you can truly be at your best. And the real truth is, the better care we take of ourselves, the better the quality of our work, our health, our relationships, and our ability to help others. You remember being on an airplane and the flight attendants come out and they tell you about what to do should the oxygen mask drop down. You have to put yours on first before you can help your children or your spouse or anyone else. And I had heard that a million times in all my travels, but the first time I traveled with my child, it kind of shocked me. It sounded different to me. But when I thought about it, I realized it did make sense. I'm not going to be any good to my children or anyone else, if I'm not breathing. And, you're not going to be any good at leading your team or your project if you're not as balanced as you can be in all the systems of your life. So our message for you today is that there are ways you can make some breakthrough changes that can bring you more balance, greater peace and well-being, and still allow you to have a positive caregiving experience in all your roles across your professional, personal, and human systems. There are 4 basic principles on which we've built our processes, tools, and resources. And those are awareness, planning, monitoring, and support. Before you can change anything, you have to be aware of it, and you also need to be aware of the impact that it's having. Once you understand that, you can build a plan made up of decisions and actions that can prepare you for those unexpected situations that get thrown at you every day. Even with a great plan, you still need to monitor the situation. You need to monitor the levels of balance and how you're feeling so that you can make any necessary changes or adjustments that better fit your needs. And very, very important, you need an active, engaged support system to help you sustain that balance. We're so used to helping others and meeting others' expectations, we're not always comfortable asking for help. So as part of the work we do, we explore how to build an intentional support network that is critical to you meeting your goals. So let's move to the next slide and take a look at our 3 high-level systems. These 3 systems are, again, at a high level, categorize the many roles that you play in your professional, which, in this case, applies directly to your PM role. Your personal, and those are all the roles you play outside your PM and or employee role. And human, which refers to the highly complex and interrelated systems within you that regulate your mind, your body, and your spirit. So I'm going to start with the human system because, without this one, we really wouldn't have the other 2. The human body is fantastically complex and incredibly capable. It's dependent on smaller, simpler units that each serve specific purposes, much like your project plans. Like a work breakdown structure, we can look at it from its most complex to its simplest units within the body. When you have several organs working together, it is a system like the ones you see listed on the slide. Different kinds of tissue working together in the same place is called an organ. And a group of similar cells is called tissue. And cells are the basic building blocks of every living thing, just like the tasks are the basic actions that need to be completed in your project plans. There are also many overlaps and dependencies, much like, again, your complex project plans. For example, tissues can be found in many systems, like muscle can be found in the muscular, respiratory, and circulatory systems. Likewise, some organs can be found working, for more than one system. The pancreas, for example, has double duty. It works in the digestive and the endocrine systems. So, aren't you glad you don't have to project manage the workings of the human system? This kind of makes even the most complex project look a little more doable. Well, except, for the fact that much of what's done within the human body is done unconsciously and involuntarily without us even having to think about it. But we really do have to think about some very important things that we need to manage if we want optimal results, and that begins with balance. As part of the many things we're responsible for, our human system really does need to be a priority, as it has direct and powerful impact on every other aspect of your life and all the other systems in which you play a role. And this is not easy. I mean, look at all the things we need to balance on this slide. All, like the body, have smaller parts that need to be managed as well, all complex and interrelated with our other systems. In your professional system role as a project manager, you're balancing scope, schedule, budget, while also balancing those competing priorities and unforeseen changes, that come, and they always do. Your responsibilities also include balancing the relationships between your vendors, your stakeholders, your sponsors, and executive leaders, which is absolutely no small task. In our personal lives, we're balancing relationships and responsibilities and expectations for some of the most important things in our lives, like our significant other, our family and friends, our spiritual relationship. We may have community relationships and responsibilities, as well as, taking care of pets, home, property. So let's move to the next slide and see what happens when we can get out of balance. So once again, I went to the free dictionary and found the definition of out of balance, which they state is upsetting the stability of equilibrium. That proper attention is not being given to all. And what that's really saying is that when we're not able to give the proper attention to all the roles and all the demands in our life, it upsets the stability of our equilibrium or balance. What happens when you get out of balance? How many of you believe that you have all the areas in your life in balance? How do you know when things are getting out of balance? I mean, what do you feel or see, and are you even aware? So let's be honest, who alone can give equal and proper attention to every area in their life? It's very difficult. But what we can do is keep to the principles we talked about previously: awareness, planning, monitoring, and support. Even with our best efforts, we get so busy, our brains seem to never turn off, even when our heads hit the pillow. That we're not always as connected to our bodies and our feelings as would be the most helpful to us. We often miss the important cues that tell us, we're getting out of balance in one or more areas of our life, and we remain unaware until we begin to experience some real negative impacts, like when we get sick, when a project is behind schedule or over budget, when a client is not satisfied with our progress or the results we're getting, or when it spills over into our personal life and our spouse or loved one is hurt or feeling neglected, or when we realize a parent, a child, or a friend needs more support than we were aware of. We're out of balance when the requirements and the demands of our systems outweigh the contributions or payoffs. I don't know how many of you have heard of the emotional bank account. It has the same principles as your real bank account, only without the money. If you don't have enough deposits, which in this case could be, affirmation of key milestones that have been met, maybe the support from your leaders and sponsors, perhaps some client accolades, and there are always withdrawals, like having to spend energy on rework, unrealistic demands and deadlines. You're getting blame instead of learning. And add to that the outside family and social responsibilities. Just like your bank account, you become overdrawn. Only this time you're emotionally overdrawn. And as we know, systems work together, so if you're emotionally overdrawn, that can begin to affect your physical and mental systems, which in turn can impact your projects, your career, your family, and other interacting systems. Let's take a look at some situations we could find ourselves in and what can happen if we're not taking the steps that we previously talked about. I think we can all relate to the first situation. We become overwhelmed with tasks. Just trying to get everything done can get us to an out of balance situation. We can begin to lose focus, become disorganized and forgetful, which can lead to stress and anxiety, which could begin to affect our projects, our deadlines, and even missing some potential risks to our projects. In the second situation, we find ourselves with excessive demands and responsibilities. Perhaps we've allowed people to have some unrealistic expectations of us. Maybe, we're overscheduled or overextended ourselves in an effort to be a good team player. Or maybe there's a client or a leader, that we just can't say no to. When we allow these excessive demands and responsibilities to continue, we begin to neglect ourselves and others close to us, impacting our health and happiness, and really our overall productivity and effectiveness. It's interesting that we always believe we'll have time to take care of ourselves later. In this out of balance condition, if we let it continue, we can end up with miscommunications, anger, disappointed leaders and stakeholders, and again, no system stands alone, so these results will impact us in other areas as well. The third situation exists when we find ourselves in a dysfunctional environment or, one we're not familiar with or just don't know how to handle or manage. In this situation, we often put the needs of others first, so much so that we can begin to feel lost. We are no longer a priority. Keeping the peace, trying to make everybody happy, that becomes the priority. In this situation, we often find ourselves in firefighting mode, reacting to the requests of leaders and clients that are not always reasonable or, even fully understood. We can't think clearly and often feel like a ping pong ball moving from one crisis to the next. While we might apply all our time and energy and effort on doing, we neglect the being, and even though it seems like we would make progress, instead what we experience is missed deadlines or rework. We can end up with an alienated, disengaged team, which may even lead to, losing some of those team members. The consequences impact our human system and can cause us to lose confidence, become resentful and angry, and in extreme cases, even engage in some self-medicating behaviors like overeating or substance abuse, or try other ways to numb the very feelings that are signaling us that things are very out of balance. The National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health says that 75% of healthcare costs are directly related to lifestyle and therefore are preventable. Gallup in the Q12 meta-analysis reports that actively disengaged employees erode an organization's bottom line while breaking the spirit of colleagues in the process. And the cost to the U.S. is estimated to be more than $300 billion in lost productivity alone. Our purpose at Integrating Balance is to expand your thinking about the importance of balance and its direct connection to our businesses and our communities. We want to raise your level of awareness and self-awareness and give you the processes, tools, and support that will allow you to manage your own state of balance and therefore your own state of happiness, health, and well-being, and success in your personal and professional life. So let's move to the next slide and see what staying in balance can bring us. So I'd like, again, to start with the human system. And in this case, the body and your general health as the foundation. So the list you see here is probably nothing new to you, right? It's the basic, bare minimum we can do to take care of ourselves. Yet, how many of us can say we are successful in all of these areas? You know, nutrition has always been key to our health. We're finding more and more that, you know, processed food and sugar have a very negative effect on the way our brains and our bodies function. We become more aware of the importance of balancing and integrating whole foods into our diets and the positive effects that can have on our health, our thinking, and our emotions. Exercise, also very important to our physical and emotional well-being. But when we're stressed, pressed for time, and or overwhelmed with work or personal tasks, it's often, you know, gets pushed aside, because when you have no time and you're behind and people are expecting things from you, even 30 minutes seems like a long time to spend on yourself. Sleep sounds like a simple thing to accomplish, right? I mean, we have to sleep. And I would say that 7 to 8 hours a night seems reasonable to most of us, but how many of us even come close to that, especially when we're under stress? We stay up late trying to get everything done. We can't unwind even when we go to bed. And even if we manage to fall asleep, how many of us feel like our brain never really shuts off? You know, we wake up with our minds fully engaged and racing, not feeling refreshed and ready to go, which is how we should feel after a good night's sleep. You know, a few nights here or there are of no real consequence, but as project managers who go from one project to the next, you know that if you're not careful, this can become a way of life. And in time, we all know this will begin to take its toll on us in our professional, our personal, and our human systems. For those of you familiar with Stephen Covey and his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you know that the 7th habit is sharpening the saw. He has an example of a woodcutter who would not stop working and take the time to sharpen his saw because he didn't have time. Of course, we all know that with the dull blade, he could not cut as much wood as he could have had he taken the time to stop, sharpen the saw, go back to work. The same is true for us. We need to know when our saws need sharpening and make sure we take the time to sharpen our balance so we can be at our best and do our best. Preventative care is such an important piece in maintaining our balance, and all it takes is keeping on track with our preventative care checkups and schedules. But as our schedules become more crowded and overextended, these appointments often get pushed down the priority list until we're driven to the doctor's office with a real illness. And probably the hardest thing to do on this entire list is to minimize stress. Now, it is much easier, you know, if you're already doing all the things we've talked about. But stress has so many external contributors and emotional components that it becomes more and more difficult to manage. Our entire culture is one built on stress. In our professional life, there are some company cultures where it can be thought, you know, if you see someone, you hear people say, well, he doesn't look that stressed. He must not be working that hard. And there are people who wear the stress as a badge of honor, think they're showing, you know, their strong commitment. Stress has become one of the primary contributors of disease in this country, and it's not expected to get better anytime soon. You know, we are responsible for our own healthy stress relief. And many people, you know, it's hard, and they ask, well, how can I do that? You know, studies are now showing that meditation has become the #1 remedy for stress. And when I say meditation, that means something, you know, that can be different for different people. It can be whatever helps you slow down your mind and reach a sense of calm. Other ways to address stress are to declutter. remove those things, remove those relationships and those long-held beliefs that no longer serve your greater good. In all of these things, again, support is a key enabler for success. Another key action that is not easy for people is setting and maintaining appropriate boundaries. We all want to help the people we care about. We all want to see our projects come to successful conclusions. And we all want to feel good about how we contribute in our different roles. And again, we all have those people that we just can't seem to say no to. And their expectations often supersede what we know is really good for us. When we are able to maintain balance, starting with our human system, look at all the rewards. We have clear thinking. We're able to focus better. We have a lot more stamina, less illness, more energy. We feel calm in those stressful situations. We have an increased ability to listen. We're centered in truth. And when we feel good, we have more compassion for others. When our mind is clear and we have more focus, we begin to have increased insights and opportunities for new thinking and creativity. And these rewards can have a direct and positive impact to your professional system, contributing, again, with more focus, greater attention to detail, more productive conversation with your teams, your stakeholders and vendors, less conflict, clear direction, better attendance due to lack of illness or disengagement, better problem solving, which can also bring about more innovation. And of course, the positive results of our human system and professional systems contribute positively to your personal system with greater self-awareness, which, is one of the most important key success factors you can have. More compassion for yourself and others, less defensiveness leading to less conflict and better communications, more enjoyment in your work, healthier relationships. You become more active in your life. You move from observing to engaging. You have more confidence in yourself and what you can accomplish. And you have greater engagement in everything you choose to take on. And these rewards are not just, logical conclusions. They're backed by scientific study and research. As we've discussed, and I've mentioned several times, no systems stand alone. So when you bring these positive results to the roles you play in your professional and personal systems, you can only enhance your performance, satisfaction, and overall success in your goals for each of your roles. And your successes in each of these systems flows back to your human system in a never-ending cycle of cause and effect. So let's now move to the next slide where Deb is going to talk about the journey to a life of balance.
Thanks, Deb. I really love what this picture conveys. Life balance is a journey which requires a defined path and goals. And as with any journey, it's going to take time. Project managers are expert planners. Think about how you plan for a vacation. You probably imagine where you could go to enjoy the time off. If you're a beach person like me, you may consider whether it will be the Outer Banks of North Carolina, the beaches of Florida, perhaps something more exotic like the Caribbean. You may consult family members or friends about places they have vacationed to narrow down your list of choices. You might purchase trip insurance to mitigate risk for a Caribbean cruise in September during hurricane season. You peruse travel brochures and picture yourself in those environments. You may even use a travel agent to book it. The excitement begins when the vacation is just a few days away and you plan your wardrobe and pack. All of that effort for 1 week. And I know as expert planners, that's normal behavior to plan that way. But I'm asking you to consider what balance you could experience in your life with that kind of focus and planning across all areas of your life. As all of you know, the key thing is on purpose. You must decide to focus on moving towards a state of balance. It cannot happen with you taking established, habitual actions, also known as functioning on autopilot, while providing care to others, whether that's your family, the people at work, or people within your social systems. Let's look more closely at this picture. At first glance, the stones may look the same, but look more closely at each stone and notice the distance between the stones. Notice how the stones change shape. Some are squares and some are more like rectangles. As the stones change their shape, the distance between the stones increase and decrease. If you weren't paying attention as you moved from stone to stone because you're on autopilot, you could easily lose your balance and end up in the water experiencing unplanned consequences from your out-of-balance condition. The other key takeaway is that integrating balance is a journey that starts with one step, acknowledging your value and your need for balance. We all know Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. It sounds simple, but thinking needs to precede doing. Curiosity is an imperative for change. You have to ask yourself questions about your current reality and believe there are alternative courses of action. If you want different results, you must choose different actions, and most importantly, choose beliefs that support those actions. What changes could you make in your leadership behaviors in life starting now if you really believed in your value and your capacity to create change? Remember, your thinking needs to expand beyond your established mental models to facilitate actions that create alternative futures. Let's look at what areas in your life need to be balanced on the next slide. You can see that you need balance in all areas of your life. Out of the three high-level systems Debbie described, human, professional, and personal, we focus on creating balance in your system or life across each of the 8 key areas depicted. And these areas interact and relate to each other as well as the systems or communities in which you engage. Debbie already talked about the physical health system, so I want to consider the work system. Just like your physical body is a system of numerous systems to ensure life is sustained, your work system is comprised of other human systems, vendors, sponsors, leaders, project teams, and corporate systems comprised of the company that employs you, Project Management Institute, vendor corporations, various other corporations and industries. And each corporate system has differing cultures, values, and standards. These systems relate to each other to ensure the successful deployment of your project, or at least that is what you plan for. If one system is impacted, all systems are impacted. And in order to try to restore balance to your project, one or more systems may have to overcompensate, including yourself and your team, which ultimately could lead to additional impacts. And this is true from a perspective of negative and positive impacts. So as you can see, it's not just the triple constraints that you manage, but all the interactions of all the systems for your project. Remember when we talked about systems create their own behaviors? It's the same concept for your life. The systems of which you're a member, as well as yourself acting as a system over time, generate the less than desirable behaviors, thus causing the out-of-balance condition. For example, the work system allowed poor project management practices, so deliverable dates could be met. This required heroic 60-hour work weeks, which you may have accepted due to the condition of the economy system, which resulted in impacts to your social, relationship, and physical systems. Less time for family, friends, or exercise, less healthy food choices, and so on. As a member of those systems, you can focus on what changes need to be pursued on your journey towards balance. It requires a new way of seeing and thinking to generate new actions. Harvard Business School and INSEAD, which is Europe's leading business school, state that the 2 most effective business tools for 21st century executives are meditation and intuition. Meditation looks different for everyone based on what's meaningful to them and may include various approaches like prayer, bird watching, yoga, focused breathing. The idea is to give your physical, mental, and emotional systems time to rest and renew. We believe balance is the spark to create sustainable renewal, and I'd like to share a story that highlights the shift in leadership thinking and ultimately strategy. David Marsing, a senior officer at Intel, once suffered a near-fatal heart attack. He traces the origin of his capacity to lead to the clarity and sense of purpose that arose from the heart attack. He said, "I died, clinically, in that emergency room. Fortunately, they brought me back. As I lay on the gurney in the emergency room, I knew exactly why I was there. I'd had the heart attack because of the way I was living. I always knew that Intel was a high-stress environment, but I'd thought of myself as somehow above it. I'd been an athlete. I'd worked there for many years. I was tough, but I was also blind. I was blind to what the environment I'd helped to create did to people, including me. As I lay there, I saw all of this very clearly. I also knew that climbing the ladder at Intel was really not very important to me. In the hospital and during the months afterwards, I discovered that my true purpose was to help people realize that they have more potential than they ever imagined they had. I made a conscious choice to go back into that stressful environment, but to do it with a very different perspective and with much more concentration on my meditative and spiritual processes. I wanted to create environments for people that would help them see their true, full potential. I also wanted to protect people from the typical responses that large corporations generate when they're under stress. These responses can be very unhealthy, as I've discovered firsthand. Marsing did many things differently when he returned to work. One was to introduce reflective or contemplative practices at alternating weekly staff meetings. He said, at first, people weren't sure if I was serious. Many doubted that it would last. But over time, they found these very helpful in slowing down, being much more aware of their environment, and opening up. And ultimately, he continues to explain the innovation that resulted from the different approach in leading the people. Self-development circles the other 7 areas because it's through intentional self-development that you begin to make changes that introduce additional balance and health into each of these areas. Where do you have opportunities for more balance? I'll turn it over to Debbie to share more information about how to discover that for yourself.
Our Pathway to Balance Care is a continuous process that allows you to first create your own individualized balance plan and then to revisit the steps to update, sustain, and improve as you move forward. You'll be familiar and comfortable with these steps because it's basically a continuous project plan for achieving and sustaining your life balance, which includes all the systems in your life, professional, human, and personal. Our first step is self-awareness. So we look at assessing your current circumstances. What's really going on? Are you happy with that? And then determine where would you like to be in the future. As we look at each of the 8 areas Deb talked about, you will begin to see how balanced or out of balance you are in each area. It will also show you how big a gap you'll have to close to get into balance and start moving toward your desired state. Step 2 in our process is to clarify those gaps. And when I say clarify, I'm talking about what's really causing those gaps. Are there some long-held beliefs that are keeping you from closing that gap, or some scary what-ifs? Maybe there's some block thinking or unrealistic expectations, or just some things you've been putting up with for a long time. There's lots of reasons for the gaps, so we want to get to the bottom of them, clarify them, start thinking differently about them, and identify some limiting beliefs and behaviors you may want to start to change. Our next step in the process is to prioritize these changes. We can't solve, world peace, but we can begin a journey to balance with some small but powerful steps. We want to make reasonable choices to provide the best chance of success, because the more successful you are, the more likely you are to continue on your journey for a balanced life. In step 4, we take those prioritized opportunities, those which you believe you are most likely to follow through on, and identify specific actions that will contribute to your balance and well-being. These are the actions that will create your individualized balance plan. So this is your opportunity to make some changes. Remember, we teach people how to treat us, so when they see you taking a balanced approach to your work and how it's helping you to be successful, they begin to respect your boundaries and make some deposits into that emotional bank account. The 5th, but not last, because remember this is a continuous process, step in our pathway to balance is to move forward with your plan. You can begin to incorporate some of the actions we've discussed and also identify those people in your professional and personal life that are your advocates who support your goals. And as discussed, you may even need to have conversation and include some people who need to step up and get involved. From the fifth step, you move right back to assess the circumstances. Are they any better? Did they get worse? What's causing the changes? And away you go on another round in this iterative, never-ending process. You'll know you've mastered it when it just becomes the way you get things done and you feel
I think what Deb was going to say there is that you feel balanced doing it. I'm going to take you to the next slide to talk about an individualized balance plan. This is an equation that sums up the importance of an individualized balance plan. Values are on the bottom because they're the foundation. Values are internal reference points aligned to belief systems and overtly or covertly influence thoughts, attitudes, decisions, and actions. Frequently, values are inherited from your culture or family of origin. Sometimes our actions and values are at cross purposes, and that's why it's an imperative to have clarity about your values. Since values are our foundation, what rests on our values? The G in the equation represents goals. So to build an individualized balance plan, you need to define your goals aligned with your values. Goals are your roadmap to reach your desired destination, in this case, increased balance. The R represents reasons. The most effective goal is one that has a defined reason attached to it. It's often the reason that's the motivator, and the more powerful your reason is, the more likely your success. So a pretty common goal for many people is the desire to lose weight. A goal to lose weight is good, but if I add a reason to that, like I want to lose weight because I need to lower my blood pressure to improve my health and energy levels so that I can be more active with my children or grandchildren, sets me up for success. When you frame the goal with positive emotion in the form of a reason, you establish your motivation. And we all know motivation may wane from time to time, so we need the A of accountability. Accountability comes from sharing your goals with the support network. Back to the systems thinking we talked about earlier in the presentation. You're part of many systems, and you can choose to establish a supportive community to help you achieve your balance goals. Could be an existing one, or you might need to build a new one. Now, there are times in our life when unexpected circumstances or turbulence come out of left field, and it can throw our balance out of whack. How can you quickly restore that equilibrium? You go back to the baseline. You focus on your values to remind you of who you are and what is important. Tony Robbins says the strongest force in the universe is a human being living consistently with his identity. Your identity comes from your values, roles, and history. Consistency comes from living a balanced life that's integrated across the 8 key areas we discussed. Because you have a plan, you refocus on the individualized balance plan goals, reasons, and accountability, and it's your simple strategy for reinstating balance. Whether you're leading a team at work, a family, or a social group, your balance strategy or lack thereof directly impacts each person that is part of those systems. A key truth is your direction always follows your attention. Try walking to the left while looking to the right. You may be determined to do it, but it will be slow going, energy sapping, and your progress will be slow, not to mention you may walk into something unexpectedly. The cane is a great example of a balance tool. It's used to balance the physical body. It helps you achieve your goal of walking to a certain location independently and safely. It might be a temporary tool after an operation or one that you must incorporate into your lifestyle. You can choose to restore yourself to balance with the aid of tools that you put in place. I'm going to turn it over to Debbie to cover some actions that you can take to increase your balance.
Thanks, Deb. You know, you don't have to wait to have a perfect plan or have everything figured out. Here's 7 things you can get started with right now. Coach instead of tell. You don't have to have all the answers or fix everything for everyone. If you're letting go of total ownership, you can relieve your own stress and give others the opportunity to expand their thinking, come to their own insights, and discover solutions. This also contributes to the development of people. Number 2 is integrating effective planning daily practices. You already know this. Your failure to plan is planning to fail. Having a daily practice to get organized, line up the right people, and set yourself up for the day enables you to be ready to handle any new situation that comes up for you during the day. Number 3, avoid the drama. Humans beings love the drama. We can't help it. It's exciting. It's interesting. It gets our adrenaline flowing. However, it eventually erodes our energy. It takes away valuable time. It distracts our thinking so much, you know, and as much fun as it might be, the negative outcomes far outweigh the fun, interesting adrenaline rush. If you are deeply involved with some drama seekers, you may have to think about changing or minimizing your interactions. Number 4 is eliminate toleration. Start identifying what you've been putting up with for a while that has not been adding value to your life or helping you reach your goals. This can be physical clutter, bad health habits, toxic people, your hair won't cooperate and it drives you crazy. Whatever it is, when you don't address it, it continues to drain your energy and distract you consciously and or unconsciously. Number 5, very important, create an intentional network. Align with those who want the best for you, those who are willing to partner and collaborate with you, those you trust and can have constructive conversations with without causing damage to the relationship. Having a coach can help you recognize and address those limiting beliefs and behaviors that have been holding you back. A coach can also help you increase your self-awareness, which I mentioned before is a critical success factor in all areas of your life. A mentor is a great addition to your intentional network. Mentors provide advice, experience, and expertise that can minimize barriers in your plan, save you time, and greatly increase your chances for success. Cleanup checkpoints. You know, monitor yourself to increase your self-awareness. Just like in a project plan where you set up checkpoints at the end of a phase with stakeholders, the project team, and leadership, you need to have some checkpoints with yourself to clean out the physical, emotional, relational clutter, and to continue with your progress. Remember, you need to take time to sharpen your balance saw. And number 7, be your own best advocate. There is no one who can take better care of you than you. Every situation is an opportunity to consciously decide what will take you to your best self. Some of those decisions are not going to be easy, and some are going to take time. Treat yourself the way you would treat your best friend. You would never be harsh, unforgiving, or overly judgmental. Neither should you be of yourself. Find your true self, stand in that truth gently and compassionately. So let's go to our next slide and look at some next steps. We hope you heard something today that resonated with you or piqued your curiosity or hopefully inspired you to take some new actions. We hope you found some possibilities and opportunities to improve the balance in your life and those you care for. And I also hope we've begun to reframe your thinking so you can see balance as a true opportunity. We encourage you to start your journey to balance with these next steps. You could get started right away on that first step in the pathway to balanced care and increase your self-awareness by visiting our website, www.integratingbalance.com, and take our online quiz to identify your balance index. The quiz is made up of a series of questions in the 8 areas Deb described earlier. When you answer all the questions, you'll be provided with a balance index that tells you what your balance percentage is in each area. It will then show you where that percentage falls on the overall balance spectrum, which is coded starting at the bottom with red, signaling that you are moving into some dangerous territory, and then moving to yellow, telling you caution and further attention may be needed. Then it moves to orange, and this shows you are moving in the right direction. And finally, going to green, with green, of course, being what we are all striving for. We would also encourage you to further your self-development in these areas, one of those being attend our Shift to Balance virtual workshop. And you can bring your balance index and see how you can improve that overall percentage. At Integrating Balance, we also have certified, experienced SPARK coaches who can help you with any specific goals or challenges you may be having. Deb and I both thank you for your time and your engagement. At this time, we can move to our last slide and see if anyone has any questions or feedback.
Yeah, I think we're really at the top of the hour, so I'm going to just say thank you to all of you for attending. I'm going to put up the slide that tells you how to submit your request for a PDU for the time spent with us today, and that's displayed right now. And I will turn it over to Kay and or Frank to close it out.
Hi, Deb and Deb. Frank here. Thank you very much. I was taking notes and also sent a few items out to the audience, trying to prompt a few questions. I'm going to ask you a question before we close out, and that is, I had said something in the chat box that project managers, because of the nature of the work that they do, are always looking for, the quick tips, the best practices, things that they can apply immediately. Most of the project managers that I know deal with some level of stress every day. Some handle stress better than others, but if you were to come up with one item that the project managers on this call today could apply immediately to their work, their job environment, is there something that you could offer that would make an immediate change in this issue of balancing, life with work and personal issues and things? Something that you could say, if you tried this, you would probably see some improvement. Is there anything you can offer?
Yes, Frank. I think the key thing would be to give yourself 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning of your day where you're sequestered and you have that opportunity to just get quiet, center yourself, focus on what are the strategic actions that I need to do today. There's always the urgent, but what is the strategic? And I think if you start each day, you give yourself that 10-minute block of time where you're not responding to email, texts, phones, drop-by visits, and no hysteria or critical problems, but it's you focusing on what is my strategic objective for today. And I think if you can frame that on a daily basis, it's going to help. Number one, you've centered yourself, so physically you've moved yourself into a state of calm. And number two, you've established your critical goal for the day, the strategic approach to managing yourself towards success.
Okay, another question. I've read about the importance of having a personal vision for yourself, where you plan to be a year from now, 2 years, 3 years, and so on. But I also read that only a very small percentage of people actually have a personal vision about where they would like to be, in the next couple of years and so on. Does having a personal vision impact your ability to balance?
Absolutely. That's an excellent question. And really it goes back to written goals. So to me, the vision is your personal goal for where you want to be a year from now, 18 months from now, 5 years from now. Having that written and written in that SMART approach that we're all pretty familiar with, that enables you to have something that keeps you focused on the future rather than getting pulled into the drama of the day or the week or the month. And it helps you make the incremental steps to move forward. And I think everyone's heard of the folklore around the Harvard and the Yale goal study, where ultimately what they found out back in the earlier part of the century was people with written goals. There were 3% out of the business schools that had written goals, and 10 years later when they did a survey of those people, they found that they were the folks that were the most successful and were earning the higher incomes and had actually met the goals they had written down, because it was really, it's no different than a project plan, right? It's your project schedule. It's your personal vision that is your schedule to facilitate moving in the direction you want to go and achieving the dream that you have in your heart.
Okay, well, those are that was some information that I wanted personally. You know, I think speaking from a lot of project managers, we do live in a very, very busy environment, and it is absolutely essential to balance the personal life with the objectives and the requirements of our job assignments. I think most of us can share lots of personal stories about where we made a decision to do something at work when we really should have been doing something with the family. And also, I've recently been with people who are working upwards of 80 hours a week. And I think most of us realize that that is not healthy, and it's going to create other problems. So this issue of balance is extremely important. It's not just for project managers, for people in general, but those of you project managers that are out there that are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, working on the weekends, having your smartphones permanently attached to your hands or your heads, I think that you should take the advice that was given by Deb and Deb today and really seriously look at how you can improve your balance between your job and your personal life. Deb, before we close out, could you share a way for people that maybe want to get in touch with you directly and maybe inquire a little bit more about the issue of balance and things that you might be able to assist them with?
Absolutely. We have a website, integratingbalance.com, all one word, Integrating Balance. And we do have a balance index out there that you can take. Debbie talked about it, that helps give you, it's a series of questions you ask across the 8 key areas we talked about. And it just gives you, it's a thought starter for you. It's not the be-all and end-all, but it's a thought starter for you to identify gaps. And then, you know, you have the opportunity to reach out to us, to attend any other workshops, and as well as obtain coaching.
Okay. Well, I invite people to get in touch with the two Debs. I had the pleasure of meeting both of them a few months ago, and we had a strategic session, and was really impressed with the information that they provided. And I really think that you should reflect back on all of the key points made during this presentation. The presentation is being recorded, so you'll be able to revisit it again at the website, www.internationalpmday.org. And with that, unless there are any last-minute questions, then we'd like to say thank you. Don't forget to claim your PDUs. And to Deb and Deb, thank you very much for taking the time to join with us today. And we'll be in touch again in the future. We'd like to have you back.
All right. Thank you so much, Frank. We appreciate it. Thanks to all of you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.